My wife dumped me for a richer man. She never expected what I secretly built for decades. The crisp, professional voice on the other end of the line was undeniably Lysandra's, though it carried an edge of saccharine triumph that made it almost unrecognizable. A chill, not of cold but of a distant, almost forgotten past, seemed to permeate the quiet air around Arden. Arden, she began, her tone carefully modulated to convey a mixture of pity and superiority, a delicate balance she had always excelled at. I just wanted to call and check in. Maxwell and I are finalizing the acquisition of the Riviera Point estate next week. It's absolutely stunning. Panoramic ocean views, private helipad, everything one could ever dream of. I just couldn't imagine you, in your modest little apartment, understanding this kind of scale, this kind of life. She paused, letting her words hang, a carefully constructed barb designed to pierce. Arden, seated at his simple oak desk, a blueprint for a complex energy conduit spread before him, merely hummed in response. His fingers, calloused from years of intricate work, absently traced a line on the paper. The scent of faint solder and aged schematics was his perfume, a stark contrast to the designer fragrances Lysandra undoubtedly favored, a world away from the ocean breezes she now described. He listened, truly listened, as she painted a vibrant, almost garish picture of her new existence with Maxwell Thorne, the global magnate she'd abruptly left him for. Each detail was a subtle jab, a polished stone of condescension aimed directly at his quiet life, his perceived lack of ambition, his pipe dreams. He could almost visualize her, perched on a chaise lounge in some sun-drenched, opulent room, a glass of champagne in hand, relishing the moment of what she believed was his defeat. You know, Arden, she continued, her voice softening just enough to imply a false sense of concern, a practiced maneuver he knew all too well. I always admired your dedication. Your focus. But some dreams, they just don't pay the bills, do they? Not in the way a real fortune does. Maxwell, he understands true value. Immediate value. Not theoretical potential that might, perhaps, one day, if the stars align, materialize into something remotely profitable. It's a harsh world, my dear. One has to be pragmatic. Her emphasis on pragmatic was a final, dismissive flourish, a dismissal of everything he stood for. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Arden's lips. Pragmatic. Lysandra had always defined pragmatism by the immediate, the tangible, the glitteringly superficial. She saw a man without ambition, not a man with a vision so grand it transcended her understanding of wealth, a vision he had been meticulously, almost religiously, building, brick by quiet brick, for over 2 decades. Her words, intended to wound, merely settled over him like a light dusting of snow, beautiful, transient, ultimately inconsequential. He knew what she didn't. He knew the true scale of what he had been cultivating in the shadows, a scale that would soon make Maxwell Thorne's Riviera Point estate seem like a mere guesthouse, a paltry sideshow to the main event. Her entire worldview, built on the shifting sands of ephemeral luxury, was about to be profoundly shaken. Lysandra, Arden finally said, his voice calm, steady, and entirely devoid of the emotion she so desperately sought to elicit. He spoke with the quiet confidence of a man who held a profound secret, a truth that rendered her pronouncements utterly irrelevant. I wish you and Maxwell all the best with your acquisitions. Life has a curious way of revealing what truly holds value. Sometimes, what appears quiet on the surface is simply waiting for the right moment to roar. He paused, letting the implication hang in the air, a subtle ripple in her carefully constructed reality, a premonition she would undoubtedly dismiss. And trust me, the roar is coming. He ended the call, leaving Lysandra undoubtedly perplexed, perhaps even a little annoyed by his uncharacteristic composure. She'd always expected him to be distraught, defeated, to crumble under the weight of her perceived success. But Arden simply returned his gaze to the complex network of energy lines on his blueprint, a silent testament to the monumental truths she was utterly oblivious to. The game, as they say, was far from over. In fact, it had barely begun. The curtain was about to rise on a play she never imagined, starring the man she had so carelessly discarded, and its climax would redefine her entire world. The hum of the server rack in the corner of his modest apartment seemed to pulse with silent power, a prelude to the symphony of change he was about to unleash. To understand Arden's composure in the face of Lysandra's scorn, one must delve into the quiet solitude of his past, a past defined by an unwavering dedication to a singular, audacious vision. Arden wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He was the son of a high school science teacher and a librarian, raised in a home where intellectual curiosity was prized above material possessions. His childhood home, though modest, was a sanctuary of knowledge, filled with books, scientific journals, and the lively debates of his parents. His father, with his patient explanations of complex theories, and his mother, with her ability to find wonder in the smallest details of the natural world, cultivated a fertile ground for Arden's burgeoning intellect. From a young age, he exhibited an almost preternatural fascination with systems, with efficiency, and with the elegant dance of physics. While other children dreamed of toys, Arden dreamt of sustainable cities powered by clean, abundant energy. He spent hours dismantling old radios and appliances, not to break them, but to understand their inner workings, to see how each component contributed to the whole. His earliest inventions were small, wind-powered contraptions that lit miniature LEDs or tiny water pumps that ran on repurposed batteries. His path led him naturally to structural engineering, a discipline that perfectly blended his meticulous eye for detail with his penchant for grand-scale construction. He excelled in his studies, not for the accolades, though they came easily, but for the sheer joy of mastering complex problems, of seeing theoretical solutions translate into tangible possibilities. He was less interested in the prestige of the university and more in the depth of its research labs, the caliber of its professors. It was during his postgraduate research that the seed of Solis Nexus was truly planted. He saw the world's burgeoning energy crisis not as an insurmountable problem, but as an elegant puzzle waiting for a truly revolutionary solution. Traditional energy grids were inefficient, centralized, and environmentally destructive. What if, he pondered, energy could be harvested, stored, and distributed with unprecedented efficiency, locally and globally, without the massive environmental footprint? What if it could power the world, not just for a century, but for millennia, in perfect harmony with the planet? The questions consumed him, turning into a relentless pursuit. This wasn't a pipe dream for Arden, it was an obsession, a calling. He spent his nights and weekends meticulously developing the theoretical frameworks, the material science, and the intricate algorithms that would one day form the backbone of Solis Nexus. There were countless failures, dead ends, and moments of profound frustration, but each setback was merely another puzzle to solve, another layer of understanding to peel back. He lived frugally, saving every spare penny from his research grants and part-time engineering jobs. It was during this period, in his late 20s, that he met Lysandra. She was striking, vivacious, and possessed a captivating ambition that shimmered around her like an aura. She moved through life with a confident stride, drawn to bright lights and grand gestures. Initially, Arden was drawn to her dynamism, her zest for life, a stark contrast to his own quieter, more introspective nature. She, in turn, was intrigued by his quiet intensity, his brilliant mind, seeing in it a potential for future success, perhaps a different kind of success than he envisioned, one that aligned more with her desires for material comfort. She saw the potential for a quick, lucrative patent, a key to unlock the opulent lifestyle she craved. Their early years together were a delicate balance. Arden, though modest in his personal spending, would divert every spare penny, every bonus, and even a significant portion of their joint savings towards his research and development. He built a small, clandestine lab in their garage, transforming it into a sanctuary where his revolutionary ideas could take tangible form. The garage hummed with the quiet whir of cooling fans and the faint aroma of ozone and new circuitry. Lysandra initially tolerated, even encouraged, his hobby, believing it would eventually lead to a quick, lucrative patent that would fund the lavish lifestyle she craved. She saw his meticulous nature as a guarantee of perfection, and therefore, of immediate profit. She often spoke of "when the invention takes off" and "our future mansion," always with an emphasis on the immediate and the luxurious. But as years turned into a decade, then too, the cracks in their relationship began to show. Lysandra's patience, always thin, wore to a thread. While her friends were taking exotic vacations, buying luxury cars, and redecorating their mansions, Arden was poring over schematics, investing in rare earth minerals for experimental prototypes, and conducting discrete field tests in remote locations, often using his vacation time for these clandestine operations. He lived frugally, drove an old car, and found joy in simple pleasures like a well-solved equation or the gentle hum of a perfectly calibrated circuit. Lysandra, however, grew increasingly resentful of his unseen efforts and the lack of immediate, visible returns. Her whispers of dissatisfaction grew louder, turning into sharp criticisms and thinly veiled insults. "Another weekend in the garage, Arden? Are we building a monument to your genius or a practical financial future?" she'd ask, her tone laced with sarcasm, her eyes often fixed on some fashion magazine or social media feed showcasing her friend's latest acquisitions. "Maxwell Thorne just bought his wife a private jet. What are you building us, dear? A bigger electricity bill?" She couldn't comprehend a reward that wasn't immediate or outwardly manifest. Arden, with his infinite patience, tried to explain the long-term vision, the global impact, the generational wealth that would dwarf any fleeting acquisition. He tried to convey the sheer scale of Solis Nexus, a decentralized, ultra-efficient energy system capable of harnessing ambient energy sources, rendering traditional power grids obsolete, and providing clean power to every corner of the planet, even remote villages that had never seen electricity. It was a technology so groundbreaking that it required absolute secrecy during its developmental phase to avoid corporate espionage and premature market interference. Patent protection was paramount, a complex web of legal protections woven painstakingly over years, and the strategic timing of its reveal would determine its ultimate success and global adoption. He tried to paint a picture of a world transformed, a legacy that would echo through centuries. But Lysandra didn't listen. She saw only the present, the glittering surface. She saw Arden's quiet dedication as timidity, his frugality as a lack of ambition, and his long-term vision as an excuse for never quite making it big. She wanted the instant gratification, the immediate social validation that came with overt displays of wealth. Her insatiable desire for opulence and social status became the primary lens through which she viewed their life, and Arden's quiet progress simply didn't fit her narrow definition of success. She believed he was simply wasting his potential, trapped in a fantasy. The arrival of Maxwell Thorne into their social circle was the final catalyst. Thorne, a magnate of old money and new ventures, was everything Arden wasn't: flashy, ostentatious, and supremely confident in his ability to acquire anything he desired, instantly. His world was one of private jets, sprawling estates, and exclusive parties. Lysandra was captivated by his overt displays of wealth, his easy access to a world of luxury she had only dreamed of. Thorne represented the immediate, tangible fortune she craved, a stark contrast to Arden's intangible, future promises. She saw him as her escape from Arden's boring life, his futile projects, and his slow path to nowhere. She convinced herself she deserved more, that Arden was holding her back. The divorce was swift, brutal in its cold efficiency. Lysandra made it clear she was leaving him for a man who understood real wealth, a man who delivered on promises of immediate gratification. She took what was legally hers, dismissing his life's work as nothing more than a childish fantasy, a foolish indulgence. "Your little science project," she'd sneer, "it's charming, Arden, but I prefer a life that actually exists outside of your garage." She departed with a sneer, confident that Arden, with his quiet dreams, would remain forever stuck in his modest existence, while she soared to new heights of prosperity. What she didn't know was that while she was chasing fleeting external validation, Arden had been cultivating a silent revolution, a secret weapon that was now fully primed and ready to reshape the world, and in doing so, expose the profound misjudgment of her choices. His pipe dream was about to become the most valuable commodity on earth. The period immediately following Lysandra's departure was, for Arden, not one of despair, but of liberation. The constant subtle criticisms, the underlying tension, the pressure to conform to Lysandra's materialistic expectations, all of it evaporated. The quiet hum of his garage lab, once a point of contention, now resonated with unbridled possibility. With Lysandra gone, Arden no longer had to hide the true scale of his work, nor did he have to justify his every expense related to Solis Nexus. He poured every waking hour, every ounce of his considerable intellect, into bringing his decades-long vision to fruition. The quiet was no longer isolating, it was empowering. He moved his primary operations to a larger, more secure facility, a discrete industrial complex located far from prying eyes in a remote, almost forgotten industrial park. Here, he assembled a small, hand-picked team of brilliant engineers, physicists, and environmental scientists, individuals who shared his vision and understood the magnitude of what they were building. They were not driven by personal gain, but by the profound potential of Solis Nexus to solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. Each team member was bound by the strictest non-disclosure agreements, operating under layers of security protocols that rivaled those of a top-secret government project. This was not just about profit, it was about transforming the future of humanity, about giving the planet a chance to heal. Arden focused relentlessly on scaling the Solis Nexus technology. He perfected the proprietary energy harvesting arrays, which could capture ambient energy from sources previously deemed unusable, transforming it into usable power with unprecedented efficiency. He miniaturized the storage cells, making them incredibly dense and capable of holding vast amounts of energy with minimal footprint, and refined the decentralized distribution network, a self-healing, self-optimizing grid that bypassed the vulnerabilities of traditional centralized systems. He secured the final, crucial patents, a fortress of intellectual property that would protect Solis Nexus from any attempts at replication or corporate theft, ensuring its integrity and controlled rollout. Quietly, almost imperceptibly, he began to attract strategic, high-level investors, not the flashy venture capitalists seeking quick returns, but visionary institutional funds and philanthropic organizations that understood the long-term, transformative potential of clean, abundant energy. These were individuals who valued impact over immediate returns, sustainability over fleeting profits. They saw not a pipe dream, but a meticulously engineered solution to a global crisis, a solution that would redefine industries and economies. They recognized the silent revolution he was forging. Meanwhile, Lysandra reveled in her new life with Maxwell Thorne. Her social media feeds were a curated spectacle of opulent dinners, private jet excursions to exotic locales, and exclusive charity galas where she was always prominently featured. She made sure that mutual acquaintances received regular updates on her gilded existence, often laced with thinly veiled pity for Arden. Poor Arden, she'd sigh to a former friend at a high society event, sipping champagne, still tinkering away in his garage, I suppose. Some people just aren't cut out for the real world, are they? Maxwell tried to offer him some business advice, a small investment opportunity in a new resort project, but Arden just smiled his quiet smile and said he was too busy with his research. Can you imagine? Turning down a chance to actually make some money. Her voice always carried an undertone of smug satisfaction, believing her choices had been utterly vindicated. Lysandra genuinely believed Arden was struggling, perhaps even a little pathetic. His continued silence, his lack of public presence, his quiet focus, she interpreted all of it as weakness, as confirmation of her superior judgment. She saw his modest apartment and simple lifestyle as proof that he had failed, that her decision to leave him was not only justified but prescient. She delighted in the stark contrast between her glittering new reality and his seemingly stagnant one, convinced she had made the ultimate winning move. Maxwell Thorne, too, held a dismissive view of Arden. He was a man who understood power through acquisition, influence through brute force, through visible assets and immediate returns. He couldn't fathom a kind of power that built itself, silently, from the ground up, disrupting the very foundations of his own empire. He thought Arden was a harmless eccentric, perhaps even a bit foolish. The world outside, unbeknownst to Lysandra and Thorne, was teetering on the edge of an unprecedented energy crisis. Geopolitical tensions flared over dwindling fossil fuel reserves, volatile fuel prices crippled economies, and the undeniable impact of climate change was creating a desperate demand for a radical solution. Governments and corporations worldwide were scrambling, investing billions in incremental improvements, but no one had a true breakthrough. This growing global anxiety only amplified the relevance and potential impact of Solis Nexus. Arden watched the news with a calm resolve, knowing that the timing for his reveal was becoming exquisitely precise. He allowed the world to continue its frantic search, knowing that the answer was not in the superficial solutions being debated, but in the quiet revolution he had been building for decades. The stage was being set, not just for a technological announcement, but for a global paradigm shift, and Lysandra, in her gilded cage of ignorance, was about to have a front-row seat to the unveiling of a truth she had vehemently denied. The setting was the Global Energy Innovation Summit in Geneva, a gathering of the world's most influential leaders, scientists, and investors, all desperately seeking a solution to the escalating energy crisis. The Palais des Nations buzzed with an air of tense anticipation, a palpable hunger for answers. Maxwell Thorne, a prominent figure in the traditional energy sector, was a keynote speaker, scheduled to discuss his latest acquisition of vast fossil fuel reserves in a controversial new deal. Lysandra, resplendent in a custom-designed gown, shimmered by his side, exuding an air of self-satisfied superiority. She delighted in the hushed whispers of admiration and the glances of envy that followed them through the opulent halls, convinced she had secured her place at the apex of society. Her life, she thought, was the epitome of success. The summit program listed a final, unscheduled presentation, cryptically titled, "A New Paradigm for Global Sustainability." There was a murmur of curiosity, but most assumed it would be another minor tech startup or an environmental NGO presenting abstract ideas. Lysandra barely noticed the announcement, her attention fixed on the array of cameras flashing around Thorne, ensuring her profile was captured alongside his. Then, the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the vast auditorium. On the immense screen behind the podium, a simple, elegant logo appeared, Solis Nexus. A ripple of murmuring confusion spread through the audience. This name was unknown, yet it carried an inexplicable weight, a subtle resonance that hinted at something new, something profound. A figure emerged from the wings, walking with a calm, unhurried gait towards the podium. He was dressed in a well-tailored but unassuming suit, his silver-flecked hair neatly combed, his presence radiating a quiet authority that transcended the flash and pomp of the conference. Lysandra, engrossed in a whispered conversation with Thorne about their next social engagement, initially didn't look up. Thorne himself merely raised an eyebrow, dismissive of the unknown presenter, his mind already on his own upcoming address. Then, Arden reached the podium, adjusted the microphone with a practiced ease, and looked out at the expectant faces. His gaze swept over the crowd, landing briefly, almost imperceptibly, on Lysandra and Thorne in the front row. A flicker of recognition, not of malice, but of profound irony, crossed his features. Lysandra's breath hitched. Her eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face, as if she were seeing a ghost. "Arden," she whispered, the name barely audible, a strangled sound of utter shock. Thorne, noticing her sudden rigid posture, followed her gaze. His jaw tightened, a muscle clenching furiously. The man on stage, the one who was supposed to be a forgotten relic of Lysandra's past, a harmless dreamer, was undeniably Arden. "Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues, visionaries, and global leaders," Arden began, his voice calm, clear, and resonant, amplified to fill the cavernous hall. There was no theatricality, no bombast, just quiet authority, the confidence of a man who held the solution the world desperately sought. "For over 2 decades, my team and I have been working in relative obscurity on a project born from a simple, yet profound question. What if we could liberate humanity from the constraints of traditional energy, forever?" A low hum of anticipation now filled the room. Arden clicked a button on a remote. The screen behind him exploded with intricate schematics, complex simulations, and real-world data visualizations of energy flows across continents. He began to explain Solis Nexus, not with jargon, but with elegant clarity, making the revolutionary concepts accessible to all. He spoke of the revolutionary ambient energy harvesting technology, the hyper-efficient storage units that could power entire cities with the footprint of a small office building, and the decentralized, self-regulating global network that could distribute energy precisely where and when it was needed, eliminating waste and vulnerabilities, rendering centralized grids obsolete. He showed a simulation of a remote African village, previously off-grid, suddenly bathed in light, powered by a single Solis Nexus unit, its children studying under bright, clean light. He displayed data projections of how the technology could virtually eliminate carbon emissions globally within a decade, stabilize geopolitical conflicts tied to resource scarcity, and provide universal access to clean, affordable power, lifting billions out of energy poverty. The visuals were breathtaking, the implications staggering. "This is not a concept," Arden stated, his voice gaining a quiet intensity that commanded absolute attention. "It is a fully operational, scalable reality. We have completed successful large-scale pilot projects in 3 continents, generating energy at less than 1/10 the cost of existing grids. We hold over 700 fundamental patents protecting every aspect of this technology, a testament to 2 decades of relentless innovation. And today, I am proud to announce that Solis Nexus is ready for global deployment." He paused, letting the magnitude of his words sink in. The murmuring in the room had ceased. A collective gasp, then a wave of stunned silence, as the implications of his revelation truly hit home. This wasn't just an innovation, it was a revolution. It wasn't just a new company, it was a new era for humanity, a paradigm shift on a scale rarely witnessed. Lysandra sat frozen, her face a mask of dawning horror, her carefully applied makeup unable to conceal the pallor beneath. Her perfectly manicured hand trembled as it went to her mouth, stifling a cry. She watched as Arden revealed projected valuations that soared into the trillions, figures that dwarfed Maxwell Thorne's entire fortune, not just in wealth, but in potential impact. The quiet, unassuming man she had dismissed as a dreamer, whose life's work she had mocked as an indulgence, had not just built a profitable company, he had built a global infrastructure that would redefine power, wealth, and human civilization itself. Her entire past, her choices, her perceived triumphs, all seemed to dissolve into ash. Thorne, beside her, was visibly paling. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. His empire was built on the very energy sources Arden's technology was designed to replace, to render obsolete. He saw not just a competitor, but an existential threat, a technological meteor hurtling towards his carefully constructed world, threatening to shatter his legacy. His face was a mixture of shock, fury, and a terrifying realization of his own impending obsolescence. Arden concluded his presentation with a simple, profound statement, his gaze sweeping over the audience, a beacon of calm in the storm he had unleashed. "True wealth, I have learned, is not measured in what you take, but in what you give. It is not in fleeting acquisition, but in lasting contribution. Solis Nexus is not just my dream, it is humanity's future." As the audience erupted into a thunderous, prolonged standing ovation, a dizzying mix of awe, excitement, and a touch of professional panic, Arden remained calm. He had not sought this moment for personal vindication, though it was an undeniable byproduct, but for the world to see the truth. Yet, as he looked at Lysandra's shattered expression, he knew that the message had landed, with devastating precision, exactly where it needed to. The immediate aftermath of Arden's Solis Nexus reveal was nothing short of a global seismic event. The summit hall became a maelstrom of flashing cameras, frantic reporters shouting questions, and a desperate scramble by world leaders and industry titans to connect with Arden, to simply shake his hand. His quiet, unassuming presence was suddenly the epicenter of a technological and economic revolution. Offers of partnerships, investments, and government contracts poured in from every corner of the globe. The name Arden trended worldwide, synonymous with innovation and the promise of a sustainable future. He handled it all with the same quiet composure, his focus already on the next phase of deployment. For Lysandra, the experience was a public, excruciating humiliation. She sat rigid in her seat, utterly paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of her misjudgment, the crushing weight of her own short-sightedness. The opulent gown she wore suddenly felt like a costume, her expensive jewelry, a mockery, glittering monuments to a shallow pursuit. The whispers that followed her now were not of admiration, but of pity, speculation, and a cruel, silent understanding of the truth. "That's his ex-wife," someone murmured, loud enough for her to hear, her words like sharp shards of glass. "She left him for Thorn, for that?" The unspoken judgment was a tangible weight, pressing down on her, suffocating her. Maxwell Thorn, equally devastated, tried to maintain his composure, but his face was a roadmap of shock, anger, and dawning fear. His publicist frantically pulled him aside, attempting to craft a damage control strategy, but there was no spinning this. His vast fortune, built on the very industries Arden's technology threatened to dismantle, now seemed precarious, almost obsolete. The news cycles immediately shifted from his latest acquisition to the potential collapse of his entire portfolio, the obsolescence of his entire business model. He had been so focused on acquiring what was visible, what was tangible, what could be bought and sold, that he had utterly failed to see the quiet, transformative power building right under his nose. He shot Lysandra a venomous glare, an accusation in his eyes, as if her connection to Arden had somehow tainted him, brought this catastrophe upon him. As Arden was swarmed by a clamoring crowd, Lysandra, desperate, propelled by a sudden, frantic energy, pushed through the throng. "Arden," she called out, her voice cracking, barely audible above the din. "Arden, wait." She reached him, her hand extending, perhaps to touch his arm, to somehow reclaim a piece of the man she had discarded, to grasp at the immense power she had so carelessly forfeited. Arden turned, his expression unreadable. His gaze held no malice, no triumph, only a quiet understanding, a profound distance. "Lysandra," he acknowledged, his voice polite but distant, like addressing a casual acquaintance, someone from a long-closed chapter. I had no idea," she stammered, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, her voice a desperate plea. "Arden, please, we need to talk." "What is all this? This is incredible." "I never imagined," she grasped for words, for an explanation, for a way to bridge the chasm she had created. He raised a hand, not to silence her harshly, but with a gentle, firm finality. "Lysandra, our conversations about imagination, and what constitutes incredible, have long since concluded. My focus now is entirely on Solis Nexus and its global deployment. There's nothing more to discuss." He turned his attention back to a waiting dignitary, a head of state eager for his attention, effectively dismissing her, not with anger, but with an utter lack of engagement that was far more devastating than any outburst could have been. She was simply no longer relevant to his purpose, to his world. She stood there, adrift in the surging crowd, watching the man she had so casually discarded become the most sought-after visionary on the planet. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She had thrown away not just a man, but a future, a legacy, a share in something truly monumental, something that would define centuries, all for the fleeting illusion of immediate wealth, for social validation that now seemed utterly meaningless. Her life with Thorn, once her triumph, now felt like a gilded cage, trapping her in a reality that suddenly seemed paltry and insignificant. The social circles she had worked so hard to enter now whispered about her past, not her present, and her success felt like a cheap imitation, a hollow echo. The fallout was complete, leaving Lysandra isolated, exposed, and consumed by a regret that would haunt her, a bitter taste that would never fade. Months, then a year, passed since the Global Energy Innovation Summit. Solis Nexus had indeed revolutionized the world. Arden, now a global figure, was not just a billionaire, he was a benevolent force, a quiet architect of a better future. His fortune, estimated to be in the multi-trillions, was largely reinvested into further research and development of sustainable technologies, humanitarian initiatives, and educational programs aimed at fostering the next generation of innovators who would carry his vision forward. He established the Solis Foundation, dedicated to providing clean energy access to underprivileged communities worldwide, transforming countless lives, bringing light and opportunity to places once shrouded in darkness. He remained the same quiet, unassuming man, his focus steadfastly on the positive impact he could create. His patience had not just paid off, it had reshaped the very fabric of global civilization, proving that true power lay not in accumulation, but in contribution. He found a profound sense of peace in his work, in the knowledge that he had contributed something truly meaningful to humanity, a legacy far beyond any material measure. Lysandra's life, however, had descended into a quiet desperation. The initial shock of Arden's reveal had given way to a bitter reality. Maxwell Thorne, whose business interests were severely impacted by the rapid adoption of Solis Nexus, spiraled into financial difficulties and public scrutiny. His oil and gas empire crumbled under the weight of obsolescence. Their relationship, built on the superficial foundation of shared materialism and fleeting pleasures, crumbled under the pressure of their combined misfortune. Thorne, blaming her for his perceived misfortune, for her connection to Arden, eventually left her, stripping her of the lavish lifestyle she had coveted, leaving her with only the memory of opulence. Lysandra found herself adrift, her social standing evaporated, her former friends now distant or openly judgmental, their whispers a constant torment. The Riviera Point estate, once her symbol of triumph, was eventually repossessed, a painful reminder of a dream turned nightmare. She was left with the hollow echo of her own choices, living in a modest apartment, a stark and painful mirror of the life she had once scorned. The insatiable desire for opulent wealth that had driven her decisions had ultimately left her bankrupt, not just financially, but emotionally and socially, her life a poignant testament to the ephemeral nature of superficiality. She carried the heavy burden of, what if, the knowledge that she had traded a profound, enduring legacy for fleeting, superficial gain, a choice that would haunt her every waking moment. Arden, meanwhile, found genuine companionship in his new life. He met Dr. Lena Petrova, a brilliant astrophysicist who shared his passion for scientific discovery and quiet contribution, her mind a vibrant landscape he found endlessly fascinating. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, intellectual curiosity, and a shared vision for a better future, a far cry from the transactional nature of his previous marriage. He had everything he truly valued: purpose, peace, and the satisfaction of knowing his decades of silent dedication had brought light to the world, literally and figuratively, leaving an indelible mark. The story of Arden and Solis Nexus became a modern parable, a testament to an enduring truth: true wealth is rarely ostentatious. It is built, brick by quiet brick, through patience, perseverance, and a steadfast belief in a vision that transcends immediate gratification. The most profound revolutions often begin not with a bang, but with a whisper, with the meticulous efforts of those who understand that substance, not superficiality, is the bedrock of lasting value. Lysandra had sought immediate validation, equating visibility with worth. Arden had understood that true potential often lies hidden, growing in the quiet depths, waiting for its moment to bloom, its roar to be unleashed. The greatest fortunes are not always measured in dollars, but in the enduring positive impact one leaves on the world, a legacy that no amount of superficial wealth could ever hope to eclipse. If this story of quiet triumph, profound misjudgment, and ultimate justice resonated with you, you'll find many more narratives of perseverance and life lessons right here on our channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video that might just change your perspective. We want to hear from you. Have you ever encountered such ingratitude, or witnessed someone completely underestimate another's true potential? What would you have done if you were in Arden's shoes? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your insights enrich our community.